Commander Taiho sat alone in his office aboard the orbital station circling Mars. The room was small and simple, with gray metal walls and a single window that looked out at the red planet below. A desk made of recycled steel sat in the center, covered with datapads and reports that needed his attention. A photograph hung on the wall behind him, the only personal decoration in the entire space. It showed two children standing together, a boy and a girl, both smiling at the camera. The boy had his arm around the girl's shoulders in a protective way. That photograph was 30 years old now. The boy in the picture had grown into the man who sat at the desk. Commander Taiho was 45 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with short black hair that was just beginning to show threads of gray at the temples. A scar ran across his left cheek, a reminder of a battle that had happened long ago. His eyes were dark and serious, and there was a weight to them that spoke of things he had seen and done that most people could never imagine. He had been a soldier for 25 years. He had fought in more battles than he could count. He had lost friends, lost soldiers under his command, lost pieces of himself that he would never get back. But through all of it, through all the pain and loss and horror of war, one thing had kept him going. His sister, Yuna. She was the only family he had left. Their parents had died when they were young, their father to sickness, and their mother to a broken heart that followed soon after. Taiho had been 15 when he became the only person responsible for his 12-year-old sister. He had worked jobs that no teenager should work. He had fought people who tried to take advantage of them. He had made himself hard and strong so that nothing could ever hurt her. When he joined the military at 18, it was so he could give Yuna a better life. When he climbed the ranks through skill and determination and pure stubborn refusal to fail, it was so she could have opportunities he never had. Everything he had done, every sacrifice he had made, every scar he carried on his body and soul was for her. And now she was missing. She had been a cargo pilot for 5 years now. It was not a glamorous job, but it was honest work, and it let her travel between the colonies. Taiho had not wanted her to go so far from Earth, but Yuna had always been independent. She had her own life to live, she told him. He could not protect her from everything forever. He had received her last message 3 weeks ago. She was making a routine delivery run to one of the outer stations. Simple job. Safe route. Nothing to worry about. Then her ship had gone silent. The emergency beacon had activated for a few hours before it suddenly stopped. Search parties had found nothing. It was like she had simply disappeared into the darkness of space. Taiho had barely slept since that day. He had used every resource available to him, called in every favor he was owed, pushed every boundary of his authority to search for her. But space was vast beyond human understanding, and one small ship was like a grain of sand on an endless beach. He was reading through another report, his eyes red from lack of sleep, when his communication console suddenly beeped. A new message had arrived through encrypted military channels. The sender was listed as unknown. Taiho opened the message. It contained 3 things. A set of coordinates pointing to a location deep in unexplored space. An identifier code for a ship, one that matched Yuna's vessel. And 3 words that made his heart stop beating for just a moment. They have Yuna. He sat very still for a long time. The words on the screen seemed to burn themselves into his mind. They have Yuna. Someone had taken his sister. Someone had her right now, doing things to her that he could not bear to imagine. The coordinates were impossibly far away. 3 weeks of travel at maximum speed. Far beyond any human patrol routes. Far beyond any territory that humans had ever explored. Whoever had sent this message, whoever had taken Yuna, they were not human. Taiho stood up slowly. His hands were steady, but there was a fire building in his chest that he had not felt in many years. It was the same fire that had burned in him when those boys had tried to hurt Yuna when she was young. The same fire that had kept him fighting at Europa when every logical part of his brain had told him to surrender. It was the fire that made him who he was. He walked out of his office and down the corridor toward the main command center. Officers and crew members stepped out of his way without being asked. There was something in his face, something in the way he moved, that told everyone around him that something had changed. Lieutenant Minji was working at her console when he arrived. She was a small woman in her 30s, with sharp eyes and a mind that could process tactical information faster than anyone Taiho had ever met. She had served under him for 5 years now, and she knew him better than most people. When she looked up and saw his face, her fingers stopped moving over her console. "Commander, what is wrong?" "I need you to scramble the Hammer of Soul," Taiho said. His voice was quiet and calm, but there was something underneath it that made Minji's blood run cold. "Full combat loadout. Crew ready to depart in 1 hour." Minji stared at him. The Hammer of Soul was a Prometheus-class heavy cruiser, one of the most powerful ships in the entire United Earth Defense Force. There were only 12 of them in existence, and each one was worth more than the yearly budget of a small colony. Taking one without proper authorization was the kind of decision that ended careers and put people in military prison. "Commander," she said carefully, "may I ask what this is about?" "Those coordinates you mentioned, they are far outside our jurisdiction. We would need approval from High Command to—" "My sister is out there," Taiho interrupted. "She's been taken by someone. Something. I do not know who or what. But I am going to get her back. Sir, if we take the hammer without authorization, I know what will happen." "Lieutenant." Taiho's eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that she had never seen before. It was not anger, not exactly. It was something deeper and darker. It was the look of a man who had made a decision and would not be moved from it by anything in the universe. "I will take full responsibility. If you do not want to come, I understand. You can stay here. I will not hold it against you." Minji was quiet for a moment. She thought about her career, about the rules and regulations she had sworn to follow, about all the logical reasons why she should refuse this request and report her commander to his superiors. Then she thought about the photograph she had seen in his office, the one with 2 children standing together. She thought about the stories she had heard about Commander Taiho, about how he had once walked through enemy fire to retrieve the body of a fallen soldier, so that the soldier's family would have something to bury. She thought about the kind of person who would throw away everything he had worked for, everything he had built, for the chance to save someone he loved. "I will have the crew assembled in 1 hour," she said. Something changed in Taiho's face. It was small, just a slight softening around his eyes, but it was there. "Thank you, Minji. Just promise me one thing, Commander." "What is that?" "When we find whoever took your sister," Minji said, and there was an edge to her voice now that matched the fire in his eyes, "let me help you make them regret it." For the first time in weeks, Taiho almost smiled. 1 hour later, the Hammer of Soul departed the Mars orbital station and pointed its nose toward the darkness of unexplored space. Behind it, alarms began to sound as military command realized that one of their most powerful warships had just gone rogue. Messages were sent, orders were shouted, and threats were made. Taiho ignored all of them. His sister was waiting for him. And nothing in the universe, not regulations, not distance, not whatever alien force had dared to take her, was going to stop him from bringing her home. The Velith Dominion had been conquering worlds for 3,000 years. Their armada moved through the galaxy like a great shadow, swallowing everything in its path. 300 warships, each one the size of a small city, traveled together in perfect formation. They had destroyed civilizations. They had enslaved entire species. They had never known defeat. Fleet Commander Thurek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the stars drift by on the main viewing screen. He was tall, even by Velith standards, standing at 8 feet with gray scales covering his muscular body. 4 yellow eyes sat in his flat face, and his mouth was filled with rows of sharp teeth. He wore ceremonial armor plates across his chest and shoulders, each one marked with symbols that told the story of his many victories. Today was a boring day. The Armada was moving through empty space, heading toward a new sector that their scouts had identified. There were rumors of primitive species in this region. Easy targets, easy slaves, easy victories. A junior officer approached him with a datapad. The officer was young and nervous, his scales still showing the blue tint of youth. "Commander, our long-range sensors have detected a small vessel. Single life sign. The ship appears to be damaged and drifting." Thyrek did not even turn to look at the report. "What species?" "Unknown, Commander. We have no records of this type of vessel." This caught Thyrak's attention slightly. A new species meant new information. Supreme Admiral Kevin, who commanded the entire Dominion fleet from the homeworld, had standing orders to collect specimens from every new species they encountered. It was important to understand potential enemies before crushing them. "Send a boarding party," Thyrek ordered. "Bring the creature to me alive." The junior officer saluted and hurried away to carry out the command. 2 hours later, the boarding party returned with their prize. Thyrek was in his private chambers when they brought the creature before him. 2 Velith soldiers dragged it between them, each one holding an arm. The creature was small and soft-looking, with pale skin and dark hair that hung in messy strands around its face. It wore a simple gray uniform that was torn and dirty. Its eyes were closed, and its body hung limp in the soldier's grip. "Wake it," Thyrek commanded. One of the soldiers slapped the creature across the face. Its eyes snapped open immediately. They were brown, Thyrek noticed. A plain, unremarkable color. The creature looked around the room quickly, taking in everything, its chest rising and falling rapidly with fear. "What is it?" Thyrek asked. "It calls itself human, Commander," one of the soldiers reported. "Female. It was alone on the damaged vessel. The ship's engine had failed. It was dying when we found it." Thyrek studied the human with all 4 of his eyes. It was even smaller than he had first thought. Its arms were thin. Its body had no natural armor, no claws, no visible weapons of any kind. He could kill it with one hand without any effort at all. "Give it water," he ordered. "I want it able to speak." A soldier brought a container of water and held it to the human's lips. The creature drank desperately, water spilling down its chin and onto its torn uniform. When the container was empty, the human finally seemed to become fully aware of its situation. Its brown eyes locked onto Thyrek, and he saw something in them that he did not expect. Not just fear. There was something else. Something that looked almost like anger. "What is your name, creature?" Thyrek asked. His translation device turned his clicking speech into sounds the human could understand. The human took a moment to catch its breath. "Yuna," it said. Its voice was rough from thirst, but clear enough. "My name is Yuna. Yuna." Thyrek tested the name. It felt strange in his mouth. "You are the first of your kind that we have captured. You should feel honored. You will help us understand your species before we conquer them." Yuna's expression changed. Her eyes narrowed and her jaw tightened. For a moment, she looked nothing like the weak, helpless creature Thyrek had assumed her to be. "You need to let me go," she said. Thyrek's mandibles clicked in amusement. This was always entertaining. Every species they captured made threats at first. They always learned to stop eventually. "Let you go? Why would I do that?" "Because if you do not," Yuna said slowly, My brother will come for me. And you do not want that. Your brother? Thyrek laughed. The sound was harsh and clicking, like stones grinding together. One creature? Against the Velith Dominion? His name is Taiho. He is a commander in the United Earth Defense Force. Yuna's voice was steady now. The fear was still there in her eyes, but she was controlling it. He is the most dangerous man I have ever known. When I was 12 years old, 3 boys from our neighborhood tried to hurt me. Taiho found them. He was only 15, and they were older and bigger than him. It did not matter. He put all 3 of them in the hospital. Thyrek waved one of his clawed hands dismissively. A child's story. It means nothing. When he was 22, Yuna continued as if he had not spoken. There was a battle at Europa, one of the moons in our home system. His unit was trapped, surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1. Command told them to surrender. Taiho refused. He held that position for 9 hours with a handful of soldiers. By the end, he was the only one still standing. But he did not give up. He never gives up. Not when someone he loves is in danger. Touching, Thyrek said. He was growing bored of this conversation, but ultimately meaningless. Your brother may be dangerous by human standards, but humans are clearly a weak species. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. You are soft and fragile. Your brother is no threat to us. Yuna smiled then. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her lips, but something about it made Thyrek feel uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. You do not understand, she said. Humans are not strong because of our bodies. We are strong because we do not know how to quit. We do not know how to accept defeat. When we love someone, we will walk through fire to protect them. We will fight until our hearts stop beating. And Taiho. She paused and shook her head slowly. Taiho loves me more than anything in this universe. He has protected me since the day I was born. He promised our mother, when she was dying, that he would always keep me safe. Enough, Thyrek said. He gestured to the soldiers. Take her to the detention block. Begin the interrogation. I want to know everything about human military strength, their worlds, their weaknesses. Break her if you must. The soldiers grabbed Yuna's arms and began to drag her toward the door. But she twisted in their grip and called back to Thyrek. You should have let me die in that ship, Commander. You should have left me to float in the darkness. Because now you have taken something that belongs to Taiho, and he will come for it. He will come for me, and nothing in this universe will stop him. Not your ships. Not your soldiers. Not you. The doors closed behind her, cutting off her voice. Thyrek stood alone in his chambers for a long moment. He told himself that the feeling in his stomach was just annoyance at the creature's foolish words. He told himself that the slight chill running down his spine was only because the room was cold. But deep down, in a part of his mind that he would never admit existed, Fleet Commander Thyrek felt something he had not felt in over 50 years of conquest. He felt the first small seed of doubt. He crushed it quickly and turned back to his duties. There was nothing to fear from one species of soft, weak creatures. Nothing at all. The detention block of the Eternal Dominion was a cold and dark place. The walls were made of black metal that seemed to absorb light. The cells were small, barely large enough for a prisoner to lie down, and the floors were rough and painful to sit on. This was by design. The Velith believed that discomfort made prisoners more willing to talk. Yuna had been in her cell for 3 days now. They had not given her much food, just enough to keep her alive. Water came once a day, a small cup that she had to drink quickly before the guard took it away. She slept on the hard floor, curling into herself for warmth because the Velith kept their ships at temperatures that were comfortable for their cold-blooded bodies, but freezing for humans. But the worst part was not the cold or the hunger or the hard floor. The worst part was the interrogation sessions. They came for her twice a day, dragging her from her cell and taking her to a room filled with strange machines and tools. The interrogator was a Velith named Krath, a specialist who had broken thousands of prisoners over his long career. He was smaller than Theric, but somehow more frightening, with eyes that held no emotion at all as he worked. Krath used pain. He used fear. He used devices that sent waves of agony through her body without leaving any marks. He asked her the same questions over and over again. How many ships does your species have? Where are your homeworlds? What are your military capabilities? What are your weaknesses? Yuna told him nothing useful. It was not that she did not feel the pain. She felt it deeply, in every nerve of her body. Sometimes she screamed until her throat was raw. Sometimes she cried until she had no tears left. But through all of it, she kept one thought burning in her mind like a candle in the darkness. Taiho was coming. She did not know how she knew this. She did not know how he would find her. But she knew her brother, knew him better than she knew anyone else in the universe, and she knew that he would never stop looking for her. Even if it took years, even if it cost him everything, he would come. All she had to do was survive until then. On the fourth day, Krath reported to Fleet Commander Theric in the commander's private chambers. The human female is proving difficult, Krath admitted. He stood at attention, his posture stiff with frustration. She has remarkable resistance to pain. I have used methods that would break any other species in hours, but she continues to refuse meaningful cooperation. Theric sat in his command chair, his four eyes studying the interrogator with displeasure. You are supposed to be the best, Krath. Are you telling me that one small, weak creature is defeating you? No, Commander. I am telling you that this creature is not as weak as it appears. Krath paused, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say next. There is something strange about it. About the way it looks at me during the sessions. It should be broken by now. Its body shows all the signs of extreme stress and exhaustion. But its eyes? There is something in its eyes that I do not understand. Explain. Hope, Commander. The creature still has hope. It believes, truly believes, that something will save it. I have tried to destroy that hope with words and with pain, but it remains. It is as if the hope is made of something stronger than its physical body. Thyrac's mandibles clicked together in thought. He had dismissed the human's words about her brother as the desperate lies of a captured animal. But now, hearing this report from his most skilled interrogator, he found himself remembering that strange smile she'd given him. That smile that had made him feel, just for a moment, like prey instead of predator. Has she spoken more about this brother of hers? He asked. Constantly, Commander. She speaks of him the way our people speak of the ancient warrior gods. She says he once tracked a criminal across 4 planets for 6 months, never stopping, never resting, until he found him. She says he's been shot, stabbed, burned, and poisoned, and each time he has survived through pure refusal to die. She says that when he makes a promise, nothing in the universe can stop him from keeping it. Stories, Theric said. But his voice lacked conviction. Perhaps. But Commander, there is something else. Our communication officers intercepted a transmission from human space. A single warship has left their inner systems. It is traveling at maximum speed toward our position. Theric sat up straighter. One ship? How did they find us? We do not know, Commander. But the ship's trajectory leaves no doubt. It is coming directly for us. 1 ship against 300. Theric forced a laugh. Let it come. We will destroy it and add another victory to our records. Yes, Commander. Krath hesitated. But I thought you should know. I showed the sensor readings to the human female, the image of the ship approaching us, and she smiled, Commander. The same smile she gave you when we first captured her. And she said something that I cannot stop thinking about. What did she say? Krath's voice dropped slightly, as if he was afraid to speak the words too loudly. She said, "That is the Hammer of Soul. That is my brother's ship. You should have listened to me when you had the chance. Now it is too late." Thirak was silent for a long moment. The shadows in his chambers seemed darker than before, and despite the warmth of the ship, he felt a chill run down his spine. "Double the guards around the detention block," he ordered finally, "and increase the patrols in all corridors leading to that section. I want the human female watched at all times." "Commander, do you think—" "I think nothing," Thirak interrupted sharply. "I am simply taking precautions. This human ship will arrive in a few days. We will destroy it easily. But until then, I want no surprises." Krath saluted and left to carry out the orders. Thirak remained in his chair, staring at nothing. His mind kept returning to the human female, to her bruised face and broken body, and that terrible, unbreakable smile. He was the commander of 300 warships. He had destroyed civilizations. He had crushed species that were far more powerful than these soft, fragile humans. So why did he feel like something was wrong? He stood up and walked to his viewing window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a single human ship was racing toward him. One ship, one crew, possibly one brother who loved his sister enough to throw his life away in a hopeless rescue attempt. Thirak told himself it was foolish to worry. He told himself that the human ship would be dust and debris within minutes of arriving. But deep in his stomach, in a place he could not ignore no matter how hard he tried, he felt something growing. Something that felt dangerously close to fear. In her cell, alone in the darkness, Yuna pressed her hand against the cold metal wall and closed her eyes. She could feel her brother getting closer. She did not know how. She did not know if it was real or just a desperate fantasy created by her tired, hurting mind. But she believed it. "Hold on, Tayo," she whispered to the darkness. "I am still here. I am still fighting, just like you taught me." And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, getting closer with every passing second, the Hammer of Soul continued its journey toward the Valeth Armada. One ship, one brother, and an entire alien fleet that had no idea what was coming for them. The Hammer of Soul dropped out of faster-than-light travel like a stone falling from the sky. One moment, space was empty. The next, a human warship hung in the darkness, its hull gleaming with the light of distant stars. It was 400 meters long, shaped like a wedge with reinforced armor plating covering every surface. Weapons arrays lined its sides like the teeth of some great predator. Its engines burned with blue fire as it came to a stop. 300 Veleth warships immediately turned their weapons toward the newcomer. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Thirak watched the sensor readings with disbelief. The human ship was alone. No support vessels. No backup fleet hiding nearby. Just one ship, smaller than even the smallest ships in his armada, facing an overwhelming force that could destroy a planet if it wanted to. Is this some kind of trick? Thirak demanded. Are there more ships hiding somewhere? Check the sensors again. We have checked 3 times, Commander, the sensor officer replied, his voice confused. There is only one ship. One human vessel. That is all. Then they are insane, Thirak decided. Open a communication channel. I want to speak to whoever is commanding that vessel. The communication officer worked at his console for a moment, then nodded. Channel open, Commander. Thirak straightened his ceremonial armor and spoke into the communication system. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Thirak of the Veleth Dominion. You have entered our space and approached our fleet. You are outnumbered beyond measure. Power down your weapons and surrender immediately, and I may allow your crew to live as prisoners." There was a moment of silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was calm and cold, showing no fear at all despite the impossible situation. "This is Commander Taiho of the United Earth Defense Force." In her cell, Yuna heard the voice through the ship's internal communication system. Tears immediately began flowing down her bruised cheeks. It was him. It was really him. "You have something that belongs to me," the voice continued. "You have my sister. You have 60 seconds to return her unharmed. If you do not comply, I will board your flagship, retrieve her myself, and kill everyone who stands in my way." The Velith bridge crew exchanged confused looks. The translation must be wrong. No sane creature would make such threats against an armada of 300 warships. Thyrak's mandibles clicked with what he hoped was amusement, though there was something in the human's voice that made his scales itch. "Human, you are outnumbered. You cannot possibly believe you can 50 seconds. That you can threaten us and 40 seconds. I suggest you start moving." Thyrak cut the communication channel. His pride would not allow him to be interrupted again by some primitive creature in a single ship. He turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy that ship, now." "Yes, Commander. All ships are locking weapons." The entire Velith Armada turned toward the Hammer of Soul. 87 ships opened fire at the same time, releasing a storm of plasma, bolts and energy beams that could have cracked open a small moon. The space around the human ship turned white with destruction. Everyone on the bridge expected to see the human vessel explode instantly. They expected to see debris and fire and the quick end of a foolish rescue attempt. Instead, they saw something impossible. The Hammer of Soul flew forward through the barrage. Its hull glowed with the heat of countless impacts. Pieces of armor broke away and floated into space, but the ship did not die. It kept coming, pushing through the wall of weapons fire like a man walking through a storm. "Commander!" a sensor officer screamed, his voice high with panic. "Their hull, it is regenerating. The damage is healing faster than we can. Focus all fire. Every ship. Destroy it." The entire Armada unleashed everything they had. Nuclear missiles joined the energy weapons. Specialized bombs designed to crack planetary crusts flew toward the human vessel. For 30 full seconds, the Hammer of Soul disappeared behind a wall of destruction so intense that it was blinding to look at. When the barrage finally ended, the Velith officers looked at their sensor screens with shaking hands. The Hammer of Soul was still there. It was damaged. Its hull was scarred and smoking. Pieces of it were missing. But it was still flying, still moving forward. As they watched in horror, they could see the nanomachines in its hull working, rebuilding what had been destroyed, preparing the ship for whatever came next. "How?" Thyrak whispered. He had never seen anything survive such an attack. Nothing in all his years of conquest had prepared him for this. "Commander," the sensor officer said, his voice barely a whisper, "they are launching boarding pods." 6 small objects detached from the Hammer of Soul and accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion. They moved fast, too fast for the point defense weapons to track properly. 4 of them were destroyed by lucky shots, but 2 made it through. 2 pods hit the flagship's hull and began burning through the armor. Thyrak's blood ran cold. "All hands, combat alert. Intruders incoming. I want every soldier on this ship converging on those breach points." The alarms began to wail throughout the Eternal Dominion. Soldiers grabbed their weapons and ran through the corridors toward the locations where the pods had attached. There were thousands of Velith warriors on the flagship, each one bred for combat, each one equipped with weapons that could kill at a distance or in close quarters. The first boarding pod opened near the engineering section. A squad of Velith soldiers surrounded it. their weapons raised and ready. The pod was empty, a distraction, a trick to divide the defenders. The second pod breached the hull near the detention block. Commander Taiho emerged alone. He wore standard human military combat armor, gray and practical with no decoration. A rifle was strapped to his back. A smaller weapon hung at his hip. A combat knife was sheathed on his thigh. His face was visible through his helmet's visor, and there was no expression there at all. Just cold, focused determination. 8 Velas soldiers were waiting for him. They were elite warriors, each one standing 7 feet tall with natural armor and claws that could tear through steel. They had killed hundreds of creatures from dozens of species. They opened fire immediately. Taiho moved. The Veleth had never seen a human in combat before. They did not know about human reaction times, which were not the fastest in the galaxy, but were fast enough. They did not know about human adaptability, the ability to change tactics in the middle of a fight based on what was working and what was not. They did not know about human adrenaline, the chemical that flooded a human's body in times of danger and made them stronger, faster, and capable of ignoring pain that should have stopped them. Most importantly, they did not know about human determination, the thing that made humans capable of running for hours while chasing prey across ancient plains. The thing that made humans rebuild cities after disasters that would have destroyed other species. The thing that made a human brother travel across the galaxy to save his sister. Taiho killed the first soldier before the alien even realized what was happening. His rifle fired 3 times, each shot finding a gap in the Veleth's natural armor. The creature dropped. The second soldier swung its claws at him. Taiho ducked under the attack, stepped inside the creature's reach, and fired upward into its throat. The remaining 6 soldiers attacked together, surrounding him, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm him. Taiho became a blur of motion, never stopping, never slowing down. He used his rifle until it was empty, then dropped it and drew his sidearm. He shot 2 more soldiers before one of them managed to slash his arm, tearing through the armor and drawing blood. Taiho did not even seem to notice. He dropped his sidearm and drew his knife. The blade was short but sharp, designed for exactly this kind of close combat. He moved through the remaining soldiers like a ghost, cutting, stabbing, blocking attacks with his armored forearm and responding with lethal precision. 11 seconds after the first shot was fired, all 8 soldiers were dead on the floor. Taiho stood among the bodies, breathing hard. Blood dripped from the wound on his arm and from a new cut on his leg that he had not felt happen. His armor was cracked in 3 places. But he was still standing. He looked down the corridor toward the detention block and began walking. On the bridge, Thyrak watched the security feeds in growing horror. He had just witnessed one human kill 8 of his elite soldiers in less time than it took to take a breath. And now that human was walking through his ship, heading straight for the cells where Yuna was being held. "All units," Tyrek ordered, his voice shaking slightly, "converge on the detention block. Stop that creature at all costs." But even as he gave the order, he knew with terrible certainty that it would not be enough. Nothing would be enough. The human was coming for his sister, and God help anyone who got in his way. Taiho moved through the corridors of the Eternal, dominion-like death, given human form. The Vela soldiers came at him in waves. They came in groups of 4 and 5 and 10, screaming battle cries in their clicking language, firing weapons that could melt steel and tearing at him with claws that could cut through armor like paper. They thought their numbers would overwhelm him. They thought that eventually, no matter how skilled he was, he would fall. They were wrong. In Corridor 7, 12 soldiers attacked him at once. Taiho killed them in 34 seconds. His knife found gaps in their armor that they did not know existed. His fist broke bones when he had no time to use weapons. He took 3 new wounds during that fight, plasma burns on his shoulder and side, and a deep slash across his back that would have dropped any normal man. He kept moving in Corridor 12. He ran out of ammunition for his sidearm. He dropped it without hesitation and took a weapon from a dead soldier's hands. It was too big for him and designed for creatures with different hands, but he made it work. He always made things work. In Corridor 15, 20 soldiers had set up a barricade. They opened fire as soon as he appeared around the corner, filling the corridor with so much deadly energy that the walls began to melt. Taiho threw himself behind a support beam and waited. He counted seconds in his head. He studied the pattern of their fire. And when he found the gap, the tiny moment when enough of them were reloading at the same time, he moved. He was among them before they could adjust their aim. At close quarters, their long-range weapons became useless. At close quarters, his knife and his fists and his absolute refusal to stop became the only things that mattered. 18 soldiers died. 2 managed to flee down a side corridor. Taiho let them go. They were not between him and Yuna. The detention block was getting closer. He could feel it, like a pull in his chest, guiding him toward his sister. He did not know how many soldiers he had killed by now. He did not care. Numbers meant nothing. Only one thing mattered. He had promised his mother. He had promised to always keep Yuna safe. And Taiho had never broken a promise in his life. On the bridge, Fleet Commander Thyrek watched the security feeds with growing horror. The human was wounded in a dozen places now. Blood covered his armor, and not all of it belonged to the soldiers he had killed. His movements were slower than before, showing the first signs of exhaustion. But he did not stop. He did not even pause. "How many soldiers have we lost?" Thyrek demanded. The security officer checked his readings with shaking hands. 63 dead, Commander. 12 wounded beyond the ability to fight. 63. Thyrak's voice was hollow. "One creature has killed 63 of our warriors?" "Yes, Commander. And he is still coming." Thyrak made a decision. It was not a decision that made him proud, but survival had always been more important to him than pride. "I will stop him myself," he said. "Prepare my personal guard. 20 of my best warriors. We will meet him at the entrance to the detention block." He stood and walked toward the door, his ceremonial armor feeling heavier than it had in years. The entrance to the detention block was a large room with multiple doorways leading in from different corridors. Thyrek stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his personal guard. These were the finest warriors in the entire Velith Dominion, each one handpicked for their skill and loyalty. Their weapons were the best that Velith technology could create. Their armor was enhanced with energy shields that could stop almost any attack. Together, they waited. They heard him coming before they saw him. The sound of uneven footsteps echoing through the corridor. The harsh breathing of a creature pushing itself beyond all reasonable limits. And then, finally, the human appeared in the doorway. Thyrek stared at him. Commander Taiho looked like a nightmare. His armor was shattered in multiple places, held together more by determination than by any physical connection. Blood seeped from wounds across his body. His left arm hung at an angle that suggested something was broken inside. His face, visible through his cracked helmet visor, was pale from blood loss and covered in sweat and grime. But his eyes were alive with something that Thyrek had never seen before in any creature he had fought. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was something purer than that. Something more terrible. It was love. Love for his sister. Love that had driven him across the galaxy. Love that was keeping him standing when his body should have collapsed long ago. "You cannot win," Thyrek said. His voice came out weaker than he intended. "You are wounded, exhausted. There are 20 of us and one of you." Taiho looked at him. Then he looked at the 20 warriors surrounding him. Then he looked back at Tyrek. "Where is my sister?" he asked. His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "She's in a cell, 10 meters behind me. But you will never reach her. I will not allow it." Taiho nodded slowly. Then he reached up and removed his broken helmet, dropping it to the floor. His face was fully visible now. The face of a man who had walked through hell and was ready to walk further. Then, "I am going through you," he said. Simply and he attacked. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of chaos and blood and violence that defied all logic and reason. Taiho fought like something more than human, like something that had stepped beyond the limitations of flesh and bone. He took wounds that would have killed him 3 times over. A plasma burn across his chest that melted through his armor and seared the flesh beneath. A claw strike across his stomach that should have spilled his insides onto the floor. A blow to his head that cracked bone and sent blood streaming into his eyes. He did not stop. His knife broke on the 5th warrior. He killed the 6th with his bare hands. He took weapons from the bodies of the fallen and used them until they ran empty, then threw them at his enemies and found new ones. Tyrek himself entered the fight near the end, when only 3 of his guards remained standing. The fleet commander was skilled, far more skilled than any of the soldiers Taiho had faced. His claws moved with precision that spoke of decades of training. He landed 2 solid hits on the human, one that broke ribs and another that tore a chunk of flesh from his shoulder. But Taiho did not fall. He absorbed the hits and kept coming, kept fighting, kept pushing forward with a determination that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his damaged body. The final blow came from behind. Taiho spun and drove his stolen blade into Tharak's throat, through the gap between his armor plates, up into his brain. The fleet commander's 4 yellow eyes went wide with shock. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. And then he fell, crashing to the floor like a tree cut at the base. Taiho stood among the bodies, swaying on his feet. He was covered in blood. His breathing came in ragged gasps. His vision was blurred, and he could feel his consciousness trying to slip away into the peaceful darkness of death. But he was still standing. He walked to the cell door and placed his bloody hand on the control panel. It took him 3 tries to figure out how to open it. When the door finally slid aside, he saw his sister. Yuna was curled in the corner of the cell, bruised and thin and shaking with cold. But she was alive. When she saw him, she began to cry. "Taiho," she whispered. "You came." "I promised," he said. His voice was so quiet now, barely more than a breath. "I always keep my promises." He stepped into the cell and dropped to his knees beside her. He wanted to hold her, to protect her, to tell her that everything was going to be okay. But his arms would not work anymore. His body had finally reached the end of what it could give. He fell forward, his head landing in her lap, and the darkness claimed him. 3 hours later, the Hammer of Soul withdrew from Velith space. It carried Yuna and her brother, who was somehow still alive despite wounds that the ship's medical computer said should have killed him long before he reached Tyrek. Before the ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, it broadcast a message on all Velith frequencies. The message was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was just a simple statement that would echo through the Velith Dominion for generations to come. She was one civilian. Imagine what we would do if you threatened our worlds. The Velith Armada watched the human ship disappear. No one pursued it. No one tried to stop it. The remaining commanders looked at the security footage of what one human had done to their fleet, and they made a silent agreement without ever speaking a word to each other. This species was not to be disturbed. The Velith Dominion never entered human space again. Their scouts were ordered to turn back at the first sign of human presence. Their maps were updated with a new marking around human territory. Do not enter. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Some species, they learned, were not meant to be conquered. Some species conquered back. And at the heart of that terrible, wonderful truth was something the Velith would never truly understand. It was not human weapons that made them dangerous. It was not their ships or their technology or their armies. It was love. The love of a brother for his sister. The love of a mother who made her son promise to protect his family. The love that burned in human hearts like a fire that could never be extinguished. That was what terrified the Velith more than anything else. Because against that kind of love, there was no defense. There was no victory. There was only surrender.